What's good, everybody? It's still weird saying the generational, especially since a lot of my past videos, I haven't really actually introduced myself like that. I just get like right into it. But yeah, thank you for tuning into another video. This video will technically now be my first one since like what, February? A lot of things have happened. A lot of things are still up in the air. But I wanted to get this video out because I know it's been a point of contention for like the last couple of weeks, maybe hitting a boiling point the last 2 weeks for the most part. And it's the WWE. Now, if you don't already know, I've posted a lot about WWE in the past on this channel before. Back then, it was a little bit different though. If you know wrestling or you don't know wrestling, essentially, best way to describe it is there was still a belief once upon a time ago that some of the wrestling was real, and not in the sense of that oh my god, like it's all fake, they'd never get hurt, blah 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 blah. It's like, no, it's like, again, watching like a soap opera on TV. It's just like the stories are fake sometimes, but the actual wrestling is real. Like, I can't fake falling off a 6 foot ladder and not get hurt. um And so I did some content back in the day before that was really well known, to the point like, hey, this is the wrestler behind the wrestler. This is some like history stuff and all that. So I've done some WWE stuff. So I feel like I have a good like foundation to talk about this, because I've also been watching wrestling for most of my life. There was a time where I just took a break and kept up with the business side of it. And now, again, I think that's probably what's going to end up happening for, the foreseeable future, especially what's happening with the WWE. So the reason why I wanted to start talking about this was the fact that apparently WWE is starting to take down creators that are promoting their content. And now it's not like they're taking down everybody, hence why also this video will just be me talking. I'm not going to give WWE or TKO a chance to do anything with this video. I'm not going to use any of their content. They can't do anything. So but when they're taking down creators, they're mainly taking down the reactors, if that makes sense. So it's the people, and it's funny because there was like some guy that I watch that does fairly decent content, but he sometimes, I don't know, sometimes he gets very critical in the sense like, yeah, I know you've seen, people that have junk in the background, hence my junk in the background, and they're just making these weird faces like, well, why, and all that. So essentially reaction content. I mean, again, if you've been on the internet, everything pretty much has a reaction content, and most of it is, I don't want to say it's all fake, but it's definitely overplayed. And that's the stuff that WWE is really trying to go after, which, again, you can't really be surprised, especially, again, if you've been keeping up with what the WWE and TKO have been doing, especially with WrestleMania having like every bar that would normally, show WrestleMania saying, nope, you can't do it. If you want to go watch WrestleMania, you have to go buy a ticket. So there's been already a lot of like signs of like what the WWE has been doing. So taking down content creators, especially like the reaction stuff, it's not too surprising. The only thing I will say, and you have to understand, I'm also very old school in the sense of that I still believe anybody that does content creation, you're just lucky to do content creation if you get paid for it, obviously. Because, back in my day, man, I'm getting old. We didn't get paid for it. We just did it for fun. And yes, some people, they got clout and they did it for the clout. We didn't get paid for it. So like the fact that some people, now are kind of getting really, really, butthurt about saying, WWE is like ruining my job, like any other business, this would be not okay. It's like, okay, first off, like, again, you're just lucky to be in content creation. Let's just be honest here. And then B, it's just like, are you just not creative enough to do something else then that your audience might not enjoy? And I say this coming from a guy who's been doing content creation since 2010, and I haven't made it. I haven't been famous. I mean, there were some instances here and there, but I never actually made a job out of it. So, but the only thing I will give these people some credit on is the fact that there was really no heads up by WWE and TKO doing this. They just kind of did it. And I guess the best way to describe it is, especially with them promoting a lot of their stuff, the WWE, and using streamer content, reaction content, and now all of a sudden just pulling the plug, just saying like, nah, sorry, you can't do reaction content anymore, when they themselves were using it It's just kind of crazy. So there's that argument. I will give him that all of a sudden it's kind of like if I did go to work and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, no, you don't have a job anymore. So bye. Like literally just being laid off like instantly. So there's some that. But I still go back to the fact is like, hey, I mean, you got paid in general. I mean, that's a lot more than, most people. So but this is just like the new image I think that the WWE and specifically TKO is trying to do for the WWE. So first off, they want you to either go to their shows, pay for Netflix, pay for the ESPN app, whatever. Which is funny because I still myself I pay for Netflix, not necessarily for the WWE, but I do pay for a VPN for the WWE, so I don't have to do the stupid ESPN app. I'm not doing that. So um, but it was one of those things of that this is like the new image because now there's also been a lot of those layoffs that have been happening or layoffs, not re-signing contracts, just releases in general. All of them kind of get lumped into releases, but they're not all exactly like firings. You know what I mean? Sometimes they just didn't renegotiate, they didn't extend a contract, they didn't sign a new contract. They're not all exactly firings. So but the TKO is really trying to change how the WWE looks and trying to make it a lot more younger, which I mean could be better or worse. I mean, younger product means I would believe a faster product if that makes sense, but they still seem to not fully commit in the sense because there's still a lot of old heads around. I mean, Roman's kind of up there. CM Punk is definitely up there. Cody's not that young. So there is a lot of still, like, I guess, morphing to do. But I wouldn't be surprised in the next year, 2 years, you're going to even see some of the bigger stars now start to kind of go away. And in a sense, and it's been thrown around a lot online, is that there's no such thing as a WWE lifer anymore. Back in the day, you'd have people that would come and go with WCW, TNA, New Japan, whatever, ECW for one point, but some of them came back and some of them, were lifers with the WWE. There's actually a couple of people apparently in creative, like God, I forget his name. The Hurricane though, like again, I wish I knew his real name. He actually directs some of the shows sometimes. So like there are some lifers, but now that's just not the state of what the product is. And I just think it's unfortunate, but now that WWE is not solely owned, it's actually owned by TKO, and they have stockholders that they need to appease. There's only so much you could do at that point, and so that's the topic where now it's like, okay, so what do you do now? Like, where do you go? And I think like with me, and this is like my stance. Obviously, I'm not going to push this on anybody else. You do what you want to do. I personally like I do enjoy the matches, especially Backlash. I didn't actually watch live, and then I had my little brother. He was watching it live. He was like, "Dude, like you have to watch it. Like the matches were actually really good, and they were. But that almost seems like not the norm anymore in the sense of that WrestleMania was a whole thing. All matches were like under 7 minutes, stuff like that. But there's also some things that get annoying, especially from the day-to-day product. Raw, SmackDown, where it's just tiring to see. It's like, okay, let's do a match, but nothing's going to happen because there's going to be shenanigans, and it's really, really like that kind of goes into my personal philosophy of that. I understand building up somebody, breaking down somebody, making somebody look strong, making somebody look weak. But when it gets to the point that you're so afraid of having somebody lose that now it's like, okay, the only way they lose is somebody has to come in and hit them with the Kindle stick or whatever, blah, 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 blah. It's like, I think there's better ways of writing stories. And I think that's just been the problem with WWE specifically for a very long time. It'll have its waves, but now specifically, especially with all the changes with TKO, that's just kind of how it's gone. So what I personally am choosing to do is I probably still I've actually, in the last 2 years, I've actually, funny enough, seen a lot of content creators that cover the wrestling stuff. And I like it because as much as I still like the wrestling, as much as I still like, matches and the shows and all that, I still like the business side of it, if that makes sense. And there's a lot of the content creators, unfortunately, because of how WWE is, talk a lot about the business stuff. And so for me, I think I'm just going to switch over to back to just watching their reviews, their thoughts, their interpretation of the business. And then, if there's an occasional match that's like, okay, I need to really watch that, I'll find a way to watch it. But I think watching the product specifically for WWE, I think for me, again, I'm hitting that lull where, again, I might need just to take a break. When was the last time I took a break? It was It was right around after like CM Punk's hype bomb, like Reign, you know. And I didn't even watch his full reign. I think like once like he really started working with a Ryback, I think that's when I stopped watching, and I still just kept up with the business. Um, so yeah, took a break and then came back when Cody came back at WrestleMania 39. Was it 39? Um, and then been watching since then. But I think I've gotten my fill, and I think I'm gonna tap out here. And as far as where to go, I mean now more than back when I was younger, there's so many more options. Obviously, there's TNA, there's AEW, there's New Japan, and then if you really want to get obscure, I mean, there's still a lot of indie wrestling. There's still Stardom, I believe is Stardom. There's a lot of options now. I know for your average consumer, you're just gonna be like, nah, man, like this is on the ESPN app, this is on Netflix, it's simple. But it's the same thing kind of with like AEW. It's like if you have HBO, just watch it on there. You know what I mean? But it's the other promotions that I understand. It's kind of a little tough. Hey, AAA. Technically, it's still WWE, but AAA, you could just stream it on YouTube. So as far as where to go, there's a lot of options for wrestling, and I guess that's where people have to start. I guess understanding where they're at as a wrestling fan is yes, a lot of people have a hard time leaving WWE, sometimes because of the stories, but sometimes because of the people. Like obviously a lot of people did WWE because it's like John Cena, you know what I mean? You're not going to find a John Cena AEW. But I think that's also where again you can get those, how to say it, you can become a fan of new characters, but you have to understand that it's going to take time to build that relationship with that character, and you have to watch them wrestle. You know what I mean? It's again, like not everybody was a big fan of John Cena. Like remember his regular tights, Thugonomics. Like he had to grow, and people had to grow with them, and eventually, it's like, yeah, we're a fan of John Cena, and then we hated him, but then we loved him afterwards. So I think it's the same thing where you go anywhere else, where you have to at least give it. I think how. If I were to jump to AEW right now, I think I would have to give it a month of shows and a pay-per-view before I can honestly say if I like it or not. And I do really like AEW. I think the wrestling is, I really love chain wrestling, and I think you get more of that in AEW than any other program right now, at least. So but I think, yeah, a month of shows plus a pay-per-view, and I think you could do it. But to kind of like end off with kind of a cliffhanger, but not really, is that I know some people are kind of surprised that everything is happening the way that it's happening with like WWE, but I think it's going to get kind of political. It's just the state of corporate America. Like this isn't the only industry that's been going through this. Like I used to work for GameStop. I used to work in the video game industry. This has been happening for years at this point. I can't tell you how many times, there'd be a game that was developed, actually did well, actually sold millions of copies. And then you hear like a month later that they had to lay off half the staff because of budget cuts. It's like, okay, so you made all this money and now you're letting go of people. Okay. So I think it's just kind of the state of corporate America, and the sense of that's just kind of what's happening. And, you hear this all the time, you say it all the time, but it's really, really true, is that if you want to change anything with a business, you kind of have to stop supporting that business. Because until companies see a loss of profit, nothing's going to change. So, but it gets harder and harder and like I kind of understand this, but not. So there was a job I worked at a bank, and they were talking about corporate America. They were talking about like ways to save money, how instead of buying an $8 cup of coffee, how to save money and make some coffee at your own house. And I remember talking to this girl about it, and she was like, this job doesn't pay me enough. So the least I can do is, subject myself to an $8 cup of coffee. And I get that, and I don't at the same time, because it's like, okay, you want to indulge. These are the little things that help you get through the day. But by doing so, it's also hurting you by hurting your bottom line. So it's little things like that it almost seems like a paradox in a sense. And so I understand people, want the new shiny car, want the new shiny TV, want the new shiny PlayStation, whatever. But it's like, you're supporting then a company for their business practices. Whereas if you hadn't bought it and multiple other people hadn't bought it, then the company would really have to look like, okay, why aren't they buying this? So. But all right, I think I rambled on long enough. Actually, I don't even know how long I've been talking. It's been like about 15 minutes. That's not bad. So yeah, I mean, what do you guys think? Anybody that actually knows anything about the WWE, if it's an outsider looking in, let me know. So hopefully my next video I'll have more of a organized background. Just yeah, I had an interesting morning and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna record this video while it's on my head because I tend to get writer's block. So all right, guys, thank you for everybody tuning in. This has been The Generational, and we'll catch you guys later.